What's good, my friends? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 p.m. today. Know there are a ton of choices out there. Truly do appreciate you making us part of your afternoon. Oh, yeah. Coming up on the show today, 3 moves that have to happen in the NBA's offseason. I had a chance to sit down with NBA Hall of Famer Rick Barry. We'll share that interview with you on the NBA Finals. Shane Beamer is being tampered with and is having none of it. Why Shano is on the right track here. Undeniable proof that we should never listen to the experts again about anything. In so doing, establishing ourselves as not being the experts either. We are simply like, I view us as like you, but somehow like we got lucky to give you our opinion on sports, right? Like that's who we are. I don't know how we did it. Don't know how we pulled it off. Somehow we got lucky enough to give you our opinion on sports.
Yeah, because we're not qualified to do much else.
No qualification. Believe me, I've tried. We've got Chris Phillips on college baseball. If this player from yesterday was playing today, he'd be just as good. And you will hear my conversation with the venerable Bob Nightingale, formerly of USA Today, now Odyssey Baseball Insider. All right, all of that and so much more coming your way between 3 and 7 p.m. this afternoon. So, Diesel, I had a CBS show on Saturday, and one of the topics, I've got the rundown right here from the CBS show, was what fan base in sports would you never consider dating? Right? Would you never consider dating? So this segment is not about that, but we are seriously heading in a direction where you're going to see and witness fireworks galore over the next week. That is because, well, let's see, Florida has beaten Texas Tech 6-0, which means that South Carolina is going to Florida for the Super Regional, which means the already volcanic and flammable relationship between myself and the Gamecocks is going to ratchet up that much more. Now, I want to congratulate South Carolina for winning their baseball regional. It's what I predicted. It's what I called. South Carolina and all of the advantages that they have should beat Campbell at home, and they did. The only chance Campbell had was to be hosting that regional, and that did not happen. They did not have that chance. They did not have that opportunity. And I've heard from a number of people here today, Diesel, who said, well, they lost so badly, Campbell did, that like 9 runs wouldn't have mattered. South Carolina was far and away the better team. I would point to these stats to those people. The Denver Nuggets playing in the NBA Finals right now were 34-7 at home, 19-22 on the road. The number 2 seed in that conference, Memphis, was 35-6 at home, was 16-25 on the road. Nobody's buying this charade of, oh, but Campbell was the home team for that game. They batted in the bottom of the 9th inning. No one's buying that charade. You're playing in Founders Park. You're playing at South Carolina. Campbell got bent over by the system. Do I blame South Carolina for that? No. I got a guy, I do the Daily Crow show once a week, Diesel, with Chris Phillips, who's going to be joining us later. And I said on his show, I said, anybody who's not a Gamecock fan is going to be rooting for Campbell. So, like, Campbell has 99% of the country behind them. And we had a guy record that on his phone, posted a clip of me being the bozo of the week for that take. It's funny, it's cute, but it's also accurate. If you're not a Gamecock fan, you were rooting for Campbell in that series. It didn't happen. And don't tell me that home court advantage, home field advantage doesn't change the game. Don't tell me that. Professionals are at the highest level of their professional sport, of their sports, of their game, of their lives. I just gave you the two best teams in the NBA's best conference were sub 500 at home and sub 500 on the road and virtually unbeatable at home. Diesel, Denver and Memphis were 69-13 at home. They were 35-47 on the road. Of course, it makes a huge difference. Of course, the outcome may have been different. Of course, I don't regret a thing that I said. I don't regret a single thing that I said. I picked South Carolina to win the regional. They won the regional. On the Clemson side of the coin, disappointing. I mean, what else can you say, right? Clemson had a disappointing regional. You're hosting the regional. You finished third in the regional. And if this were year 10 for Eric Bakich, I would say disappointment would turn to unacceptable, right? If this were year 10, but it's year 1, and they had a bogus suspension, and it came down to the final at bat. When the ball left the bat, we all thought it was gone, but it wasn't meant to be. Bigger picture, though, what a first season for Eric Bakich. The future is so bright, you need shades. Diesel, being new to college baseball, and I'll be totally honest with you guys, maybe I shouldn't be, but I will. I can't name a single player on Florida's baseball team. I could name 2 or 3 on South Carolina's baseball team. There's going to be a bunch of Gamecock fans, if the Gamecocks beat the Gators, which could happen, that are going to be all in my ear, and, they're going to be all in my ear and all in my face about something I know really very little about. I know about how good Florida is. I know they're the 2 seed. I know they were the top seed in the SEC. I know they didn't win the SEC tournament. And I know they're the 2 seed in this tournament. And I know how the baseball postseason works. But I haven't watched a single Gators baseball game this entire year. College baseball, in terms of Florida, I haven't watched a single Florida game this entire year. And I'm going to have a bunch of Gamecock fans in my ear saying, how do you like that? Oh, how do you like that? Can I ask you guys this question to open the show today? And I'm going to ask this to Chris Phillips when he's on as well. In your heart of hearts, Diesel, you think the Gamecock fans would rather have this win over Florida or have beaten Florida in November in football? In their heart of hearts. Now, if you ask them that today, they're invested in this right now, right? Sure. They're going to say, well, it's just a regular season game versus a chance to go to the College Baseball World Series. And one has already happened, and one, the loss they've already recovered from, right? They've already recovered from that Florida L. But if you go back to November, that win, Diesel, means they finished 9-3, not 8-4. 9-3 in year 2 for Shane Beamer in the Southeastern Conference. What do you think they choose?
Football. 100%. 100%. I don't care how invested in baseball South Carolina fans are. They would rather have football success than baseball success. And there's a handful who would be honest enough right now to tell you that, but most wouldn't. Most wouldn't. They would say, oh, no, baseball means so much to us. We want this win in baseball. We want to get to Omaha in baseball. I don't believe you. I genuinely don't believe you. And to your point earlier, Mark, about Campbell and how good they were at home this year, I'm doing a little home and away comparison of how they performed against regional level competition, teams that made the regionals, teams that are ranked in the top 25 at home this year. At home, they were 6-2 against regional quality opponents this year. They were 4-2 on the road. So they were a plus 500 in both of those categories. 6-2 at home, 4-2 on the road. So It matters. It matters playing at home. It really does. And Campbell got screwed by that. Campbell should have been allowed to play this series, host this series at a nearby minor league ballpark. There has to be one nearby that could hold the kind of fans that would come. And we'll just never know. We'll never know how much that home field advantage, or not having it, a lack thereof, cost them.
Never will. Never will. And so, Gamecock fans, you don't know that you would have won on the road. You don't know. Campbell doesn't know that they would have won at home. You were very dominant in your home regional. And it was about a month ago that I said that the Gamecocks playing at home would be my favorite to win the College Baseball World Series. I believe Founders Park is that caliber of advantage, right?
And you should be proud of that.
Right. And that's awesome. And we picked you to win your regional. Didn't pick you to host it, but we picked you to win. So, it's the old thing where people like to isolate a certain clip of something you said, right? Campbell got bent over for not hosting the regional, and then everyone wants to tell you told it, you're so. And I got to be honest with you, Diesel. We got Chris Phillips joining us at 440. He is guilty of some really lowbrow analysis, like real, low-hanging fruit analysis, where he somehow thinks that the result of the regional shows that Campbell wasn't deserving of hosting. And that is the most basic, lazy analysis that you could possibly have. Oh, look, we won. Told you they didn't deserve. The hell does that have to do with anything?
According to a 45 to 55 game season, they absolutely deserved to host a regional. They don't just launch group of 5 or mid-major baseball programs up into the top 10 just for poops and giggles. They earned it. They earned it over the course of a 50-game season. And look, South Carolina, your home field advantage was enough to overcome that, and that's great. You put it on them in the elimination game, but guess what? Campbell put it on NC State in the game prior to that. They scored 11. They blew NC State, 10-run ruled NC State one game prior to that. So, any team can get hot and put up a lot of runs in a game. You just happen to do it in the elimination game against them.
The other thing I'd like to mention, guys, is that as somebody new to this sport, this was a word that Will Pelagic used to use, Diesel. Will Pelagic here, consternation across the nation. He used to use this word, and it was penal. Do you remember that? He would always use the word penal.
I'm familiar with the word.
It's too penal. My word is severe. As somebody new to this sport, guys, I think what happens in the winner's bracket, you have your 2 losers of the first game, and then you have your 2 winners of the first game, then the 2 winners play. Whatever happens to the loser of that game, I think is way too severe, because then what happens is that winner only needs to win 1 more game and is in the championship match. And the loser in the winner's bracket then has to win 3 games in a row. They then need to beat the winner of the loser's game, and they need to beat the person who's just sitting in there twice. And you think about that as it pertains to the Clemson-Tennessee game that Clemson lost in extra innings, bogus suspension in that game, 3-run home run by Tennessee with 2 outs in the 9th inning. You think about that, and it's just man, they go from Clemson goes from being in the penthouse to needing a miracle, missing one of its best players, needing to go into Sunday winning 3 games in a row, 2 of which are going to be played on Sunday. So, to me, I looked at that outside looking in, and I'm and I've seen this now in a bunch of regionals. Who thinks that's the best way to decide this? Who thinks this is the right way to decide this? It doesn't make sense. You got 2 teams that are 1-0. They play each other. One team goes 2-0, and the team that goes 1-1 then has to win 3 games in a row. The team that's 2-0 only needs to win 1 more game. I don't know, man. I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. 326-3663 is the number to join us on the show. You can get to us on the text line as well at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan, and away you go on the show. Let's check and see what you guys are saying on the text line. Mark, Gamecocks baseball is super. Clemson is subpar. So says JT in Greer. JT, Clemson has a brand new coach. You know this. Clemson had a very good season. After starting 15-13, their coach appeared on this show, and they jumped. They got the offsides bump. They jumped. Clemson had a very, very good season. J.D. Wyatt, who is J.D. from Simpsonville, emailed the show, and he says, Mark, I hope my email finds you having a good regionals weekend. Gamecocks hopefully don't provide us with the highest high yesterday and the lowest low yesterday by losing in a 2-hit shutout tonight. Anyway, I was going to say NASCAR runs at Sonoma Raceway Sunday, June 11th at 3:30 on Fox. I would recommend checking that one out as it has the potential to be a little exciting. I also texted in about your view on the point system. And while I don't like the system, I don't know that you have a full understanding for it. So if at any point you have any questions, I would love to help bring what little NASCAR knowledge I have to you. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I stay listening when I can. All the best. Best regards, JD. No, JD, look, again, new to college baseball, new to NASCAR. These were not sports that were popular in other markets that I've been. I have a relationship with you guys where I'm totally open and honest with you. You know, other hosts might be like, I would never admit that I don't know something on the air. No, like I'm open and honest with you, right? I understand what's going on in the college baseball regionals. Being on with Chris Phillips every week, I paid more attention to it than I normally do. I understand how important it is to you guys, but I still believe, you know, Diesel, like if we posted a poll, which win would Gamecock fans rather have? What they would say is the baseball, because that's right now. But they're not telling the truth. You know, they'd rather have the football win over Florida than a baseball super regional.
Would South Carolina fans trade an annual playoff team, even if we're talking about the 12, like realistic 12-team expansion, a team that is in there or competing for it year in and year out, would they trade that for missing the regional more often than they make it?
Of course.
I think that should be a poll.
Of course. Let's make it a poll. Of course they would. Spur Daddy says, Mark, I texted you on the national show after I thought Clemson won. Saw that, Spur Daddy. Thank you. I was watching and they scored in the 10th, and I turned off the game. I was unaware that Tennessee challenged the call and the run didn't count. Sorry for my misinformation. Texter says home field didn't help Clemson at all. Yeah, it's no guarantee that it's going to help, Texter. No guarantee, but I've given you some kind of undeniable stats that it matters big time. Texter says, I take the Florida win over Florida in football any day. I love Carolina baseball, but I got to take the dub on the gridiron. Texter says, I'm a Gamecock fan. We want both wins, you greedy bastards. I don't really follow college baseball anymore, but I knew Kevin O'Sullivan when he was coaching at Clemson, so I always pull for Florida when Clemson is out. Welcome on this bandwagon, Texter. Welcome. We're glad to have you on board. Anyone says they'd rather have the baseball wins over football, they are a liar. Hell, I'd give up Omaha for a win over Clemson in football, so says Mongo. Mark, South Carolina's finally healthy. That makes the difference. They didn't have everyone for the last month of the season, so says JT and Greer. Yeah, a lot of teams don't have everyone, JT. A lot of teams don't have everyone. You know, I spoke to Chris Phillips extensively about this. He said, Mark, I wouldn't say that the Gamecocks have had any more injury problems than anybody else has. Texter says, it isn't the best way to do the regionals as far as the eliminations, but I prefer it over one and done. You can't have one and done. You can't do that. But Diesel, could you do triple elimination?
I like with triple, it just drags the whole thing out. I like the double elimination format. It's unique. No other sport does that in college in their postseason. I like it. Yeah, it puts you in a hole if you lost your first game. But you know what? If you lose your first game in a regional, you should have to dig out of that hole. I don't have a problem with the format at all.
Well, Clemson didn't lose their first game. They won their first game.
Yeah,
In
that's
the
true.
winners bracket, they lost the second game in extra innings.
Well, it penalizes you for going, on a losing streak.
A little bit much.
Yeah.
It penalizes you a little bit much, Diesel. I mean, Tennessee then needs to win 1, and you need to win 3. And you need to win 3 in about a 24-hour period. Now, Florida found themselves in that situation, and Florida won 3 in a row. Florida beat the team that they lost to, Texas Tech, beat number 10 UConn in an elimination game, and then beat Texas Tech twice. But I think, to me, when I look at that scenario, it's too, to channel my inner Will logic here, too penal to the team that loses the winner's bracket game. 3 in a row in 24 hours is virtually impossible. But yeah, Gamecock fans, bring it. Bring it. Yeah, I don't know Florida baseball. I'm just being totally honest with you, as honest as I can be. I don't know Florida baseball. I can't tell you squat about the roster. I just know about how good the team is. I can name the coach, right? So if you want to run smack, you're running smack against somebody who, this is my first couple of months ever really covering the sport. But if you want to duke it out, we will duke it out. Coming up next on the show, 3 moves that just have to happen this NBA offseason. That, my friends, is next. And this is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. So Diesel, I do that topic on the CBS show on Saturday. Which fan base would you not take a date with? And like one thing that I do, so folks, if you host a 4-hour show every day and you're like, crap, that's 12 long segments, and do I need 12 different ideas? I don't have 12 different ideas today. Oh, bleep, what am I going to do? One of my strategies is to go back and just look at what I was doing a year ago, because I have all these Google Docs in my Gmail folder. I'll go back and I look at this, and there's certain topics that are like once a year topics. If you do them more than that, people are going to be like, you just did that, right? So I had this from a year ago on a rundown, and I'm like, I'll bring that back. Why not? Is there a fan base that you wouldn't date? Well, a year ago, Diesel, I had Georgia and Florida State as two fan bases that I wouldn't date. A year later, that has changed. There is only one, and it's neither of those two. I would never date, Diesel, a Gamecock fan. Okay? Never. And oh my God, Mark Ryan, are you committing suicide on local radio given that 24% of your audience calls themselves Gamecock fans? You got to hear the explanation. You got to hear the reason. Okay? I would never date a Gamecock fan. And yes, if you think it will click, we can make it a podcast. Okay? I would never date it, Diesel, because never date one. Not because there's such a rivalry between Florida and South Carolina or anything of the sort. I wouldn't date one because the bottom 10% of that fan base has already come after my wife. And I don't feel like being further brought into that drama of dealing with them. I don't know if you saw this, Diesel. Campbell posted the score of when they lost yesterday. And Gamecock losers overran the Campbell account with just the most classless smack you could have possibly seen. I actually felt bad about it because I realized that my comments made that worse for Campbell. When my statement is out there that Campbell should have hosted and, they got bent over, that riled up the Gamecock fan base on Chris Phillips' show, and that made it worse for Campbell when they did actually lose. But you should go to the Campbell Twitter feed of when they posted the score of them losing, which is classy to do, right? You lost a game, you post the score. We've addressed that on this show before. Not everybody does post the score when they lose. They post the score, and Gamecock morons are like trashing them as if like you accomplished something by beating Campbell. What advantages do you have as South Carolina? You have every advantage. At home, you should beat Campbell. And yet the bottom 10% of this fan base, okay, this collection of dumbasses, which is not the whole fan base, 90% of them are good, but the bottom 10% of that fan base, that collection of dumbasses, which is the worst section of any fan base that I've ever encountered, Diesel, I could never date a Gamecock fan because I do not want to subject myself or her to that. And I'm happily married, but if I was single, I could never do it.
Look, you could call it sportsmanship if you wanted to. You could call it, if you want to get a little more philosophical, you could call it the better angels of our nature. And man, that bottom 10% of South Carolina fans show that they have taken some bird shots of those angels floating around over their heads. It's a metaphor, by the way. If you don't know what the better angels of our nature means, it's a metaphor for 4 human motivations. Empathy, don't have that. Self-control, really don't have that. The moral sense and reason. 4 things that bottom 10% of South Carolina Gamecock fans simply do not have. Empathy, self-control, the moral sense, and reason. They don't have it. They take every single opportunity to light people up in the most classless ways they possibly can. And it's pathetic. It's really pathetic to see. And hey, we have people in our own audience, in our own listening audience, who are guilty of that. But I like to think that we're trying to get through to them. We're trying to appeal to their better angels. But some it's harder to get through to than others.
Who is your fan base, Days?
Fan base that I would not date. Oh, I couldn't date a Georgia Southern girl.
What would happen if you did?
Absolutely could not date. It would be nonstop trash talking for a year. Whoever won the game last would needle the other constantly. Couldn't do it. Though I tried to get a Georgia Southern Eagle in here working for the Fan Upstate, and we had one temporarily, and it didn't work out long term. But I thought I was looking forward to how fun that was going to be.
So Diesel couldn't date Georgia Southern. I couldn't date South Carolina. All right. And again, I have Gamecock friends, and 90% of that fan base are good, wholesome people. I don't know why South Carolina leads the nation in ejections, but I've seen the behavior. I don't know why so many of the viral videos of poor behavior at college football games involves Gamecock fans, but I see the videos, right? People send them to me. I don't know why that is, but you know how they say, like, the bad apple ruins the bunch, right? Like, because of the bottom 10%, I would never subject anyone that I was with to that. And imagine the extra fire, Diesel, if the bottom 10% got wind of, back in my single days, that I was dating a Gamecock fan. Imagine how that would go, and so it's like, now that I've experienced that as a married man, like, if I was ever, like, if you rewound my life 5 years, and like, if you could tell your younger self something, I would say no dates with any Gamecock fans. She might not be in that bottom 10%, but you're opening yourself up to that bottom 10% if you go down that road.
Man, I really, really wish that I had some money back in the day when I came up with the idea for a sports-centric dating app where you could go in and set what sports you're a fan of. So it would show you a higher percentage of those sports fan bases, what teams you're a fan of. So it would show you a higher percentage of those teams, the women in that team fan base, and then fan bases that you absolutely would not date. So let's just say you were a Clemson fan. You could say, oh, I'll date a Clemson fan. I would date a Georgia Tech fan. I'd date a Furman fan, a Wofford fan, a whoever fan. Absolutely will not date South Carolina fans. Like, don't even bother showing me South Carolina fans unless they're very, very, very trustworthy. And then, all right, maybe we can make a deal. But man, I feel like that could have been a great dating app.
It would have, Diesel. I mean, that would have been incredible. And like think about that. Diesel's got a couple really good ideas here. He's got the lazy river, and he's got the dating app by sports fans. I believe I saw, like,
they call it balls in your court.
Yeah, there was one. There was one called Gator Singles, where, like,
really?
you can like, like, there is a Gator Singles one. This is the same thing. I've heard this in this building, Diesel, and I'm tired of answering it, so I'll let you answer it for me, okay? JT and Greer says every fan base has a bottom 10%. Your response?
It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. The difference, JT and Greer, is how that bottom 10% behaves relative to other teams' bottom 10%. Guarantee you the bottom 10% of Furman fans, the good Christian people that they are, don't behave the way that the bottom 10% of Gamecock fans do.
I have reeled off, JT, the list of teams that I have covered, which is the same as the list of teams whose fan bases I've pissed off. Okay, every team I've covered, I pissed off their fan base. The bottom 10% of the Gamecock fan base has been my worst experience with any fan base that I've ever encountered. Ever. It is the bottom of the barrel. It is basement-dwelling scum. All right? And I haven't encountered that with any other team's bottom 10%. Let's get to Rich in Chicago, who is up next on the show today. Hey, Rich, got 2 minutes for you, buddy. What's good, man? Go ahead.
I'll give the 2-minute version. Real quick, I tried to get on Saturday, and I was on hold for an hour. I couldn't get on.
I'm so sorry.
And as it turned out, the timing couldn't be better. I did the homework assignment, and what we talked about, I got responses from both the South Carolina baseball office. They emailed me, and I got a response from Florida with Spurrier, and now they're going to be playing each other this week.
And what was the response?
So,
Let's hear it.
They're trying to arrange it. They know that I have sports background and as a former athlete. So they're calling me to line up. I'm acting as kind of your sub agent, or I can give you the direct phone numbers of both.
No, it's okay.
And
You can handle it. It's cool. It's good with me.
No, it's up to you. I've got the direct numbers.
Well, okay. So number one, Rich, this is awesome. Okay. This is, thank you so much for doing that. The fact that you got responses is fantastic. All right. So the fact that you got responses puts you ahead of us. Okay. But we'd love to have it. So if you want to be the point man coordinating this and let me know when it is, and then provided that you're not pulling a fast one on us, Rich, and it's not Steve Spurrier dressed as your son, that shows up on the call, we're gonna be good, man. We're gonna be good. So you and I can,
just so you know, the reason this is legit, and it is because we don't know each other. We know each other via phone calls and me being on air with you guys. But the associate athletic director is a very close friend of mine at Florida. He is the gatekeeper because Spurrier is a Gator ambassador now. He works in the athletic office. Well, he works in his group, and he was out of town. Not Spurrier, but my guy. He called me and said, I'll line it up and tell you how to get it done when I get back next week, which is this week. But think if you could get both these guys on, and Spurrier being a former coach at both schools, and Kingston rolling in since he did win, that would be, you'd have both sides.
I'd love it. I'd love it. Listen to this. Like Rich in Chicago, I can't afford you to be my agent. I can't afford you, but I sure do graciously accept all of these nice givings that you're doing. And we had a jam-packed show with calls from all over the country and Canada. So I hate to hear that you couldn't get through, Rich, but I really appreciate the time. I was overwhelmed in a good way with a number of calls that came in on Saturday. But here's what I'd like you to do, buddy, if you can. Let's you and I have an email correspondence on this, okay?
Actually, if you want, you can text it to me. I emailed your station and requested your direct email and phone. So
I'll give it to you now. I'll give it to you now. Mark Ryan at thefanupstate.com. Okay? So that's Mark Ryan. Yeah, that's M-A-R-C. Remember, there's a C. M-A-R-C Ryan at thefanupstate.com is my email. You and I can have that email correspondence. We'll see if we can hook it up. And Rich, I love you, brother. So sorry we missed you. We'll talk to you soon, okay?
I got one last thing for you since you want some intel.
Okay.
I had to kind of brief myself too. Florida's got 6 first-team All-SEC players in baseball, and South Carolina's got 2. You got Messina, the catcher, and a guy named Petrie, who's an outfielder. Florida's got 6. They got 3 infielders that are first-team SEC.
There you
2
go.
outfielders and a pitcher. So it looks like a mismatch on paper.
I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much, Rich. Great to hear from you. All right, up next, we've got our NBA Hall of Famer, Rick Barry, a conversation on the NBA Finals with him. I think you'll enjoy it next here on Offsides. We are the Fan Upstate.
injuries, Hero's been out, and to get here as an 8th seed, it's great accomplishment, and it's only one game. And they just had a bad game shooting. They shot 25% or something from threes. If they had shot reasonably decent from threes, they could have possibly been in the game, and who knows, maybe win. And this is coming from someone who knows what it's like to be the underdog. Okay, biggest mismatch in the history of the NBA Finals was supposed to be 1975 Washington Bullets against the Golden State Warriors. And they got the sweet part right, but they got the wrong team.
Amen. They certainly did. NBA Hall of Famer Rick Barry joining us here on the show. So, Rick, can you explain to the layman how Miami is here? I mean, they were the 8th seed. They lost a play-in game. They were trailing late in the second play-in game. They were the lowest scoring team in the league, and they were 12-13 in their final 25 games of the season. 300-1 odds to win the NBA championship before the playoffs began. Like, when you watch this team, what are you seeing here? Can you explain how this is happening to us?
Well, I mean, everything goes in cycles and stuff, and they obviously, I don't know what the last part of the 25, what did they do in the last few games there, and how well were they playing there going into the playoffs? That's the criteria you look at. How is a team playing the week before going into the playoffs? And because whatever happened before that is irrelevant. You want to be playing well going into the playoffs. If you're not playing well going into the playoffs, you're subject, if you're one of the better teams, of maybe getting knocked off. It's timing, like they say in life, is everything. And so they seem to have had a chance to put it together, but they believe in themselves. I think, that Eric is a terrific coach. He has been playing a brand of basketball that helps to keep them in the game. They work hard on their defense. They actually did a nice job on Denver. That's one of the lowest scoring games that Denver's had in the playoffs. But their offense let them down. So defense doesn't win championships for you. Offense wins championships for you, but you're not going to win if you don't play decent defense. And I don't know if there's a team that's been out of the top 10 in defense in the finals that's ever won a championship in the NBA. You don't say you have to be the best. The better you are, the better it is for you. But that's the element. Defense does not win championships, but you don't win without it.
Rick Barry joining us here on the show. Rick, what strategic adjustments would you make if you are Eric Spoelstra in game number 2?
I don't think make shots. They got more open 3-point shots in that game than any game they've had in the playoffs thus far, and they're normally an outstanding percentage, high percentage shooting team, especially when they get open shots, and they weren't even knocking those in. Their best 3-point shooters were horrendous. And that's a lot of points to give up in doing it. So knock down the shots. Obviously, they were executing well to get the opportunity. They just didn't make their shots. And the other thing is they need to attack the basket and get themselves to the free throw line. I know they set a record or something, 2 free throws. None of the starters were to the free throw line in the entire game. That's crazy. Now, one of the things that led to it, I'm sure, is the fact that when they got down a big number, they were trying to get back in the game, and maybe some ill-advised threes they were taking, and they were trying to get back in with the 3-point shot as opposed to attacking the basket. But you have to have a balanced game. I say that because the Warriors against the Lakers did the same thing. They crushed the Lakers from 3-point range in one of those games. But what happened? They had 5 free throws to 25 free throws for the Lakers. So you don't just win on 3-point shots. You win on a balanced game, but you got to get some inside scoring and at least get to the free throw line.
Rick Barry, NBA Hall of Famer, joining us here on CBS Sports Radio. Rick, why were so many so wrong about Denver? I mean, this is a team that was first in the West since December 20th. Yet you look at the betting odds, and it was Phoenix, and it was Golden State, and it was the Lakers, and it was anybody but Denver. Here they are.
Yeah, I can understand why they put Phoenix in there, because with Kevin Durant going there, everybody thought that was going to be the answer, and they're going to be great because they do have they have Booker and whatever. But and the Lakers, hoping to come together. You got LeBron and Davis, and the Warriors should have never been in the conversation. There was no chance in the world that the Warriors. I kept saying stuff on my shows and stuff. Listen, unless a miraculous thing takes place and all of a sudden they become the defensive team that they were in the championship years, they have no chance of winning the championship, none whatsoever. And I've always liked Denver. As I said, I love the Joker. And what they've done with their team and putting together the team, they've got 2 stars on their team, and the other guys are willing to be the role players, but they're also getting out and getting after people defensively, and they've been relatively consistent all year. I don't know what they're going to do with the Joker. And because if you put him in the post, I think they did a good job of overplaying him to try to prevent him to get the ball sometimes. But they're not going to stop him to get the ball at the top of the key. And to me, I think that's when he's most dangerous, because he can shoot it if you don't guard him, which means what? He gets out of aisle away from the basket, which opens up the lanes for guys who want to drive and go to the basket. And so it just makes your offense flow so much better. And then if you're really intelligent, know how to play this game right and set your man up, which I love doing, moving without the ball. Do you see all the back cuts that the Nuggets get when the Joker has the ball? And here's an interesting stat. And I'm not a big statistical guy in the analytics stuff, but a lot of it's really interesting. And this is, I think, really true. But the Denver Nuggets have a better record when the Joker gets 12 or more assists as opposed to when he gets 30 or more points.
Wow. That's fascinating. And look at the inner workings of Denver and what makes them tick and what makes them successful. Rick, how would the games of Rick Barry and Nikola Jokic worked together?
Oh, God, I would love to play with him. I mean, I'd love Clifford Ray and doing stuff. I mean, he's willing to come out to be a screener. He can do the screen and fade. Clifford couldn't do that because he couldn't shoot. and I think we probably ran the two-man game better than anybody, and it would have been unbelievable, because if he was a shooter and could have done the pick and fade like a lot of people do. That was my part. Billy Pauls, when I played with the Nets in the ABA, was the first center I ever had that picked and faded and wanted to take a jumper and not roll in the basket. But the Joker can do both. See, that's another one of his dimension of his offensive game. But oh my God, and then passing and be able to move without the ball. Oh my God. I mean, that's like, if you know how to play the game, that's like thank you, God. I mean, it's like playing with a great point guard. He's like a point guard and plays center.
He is, and that's what's incredible about him. It really is. What does Denver do offensively, Rick, that makes them so difficult to defend?
They have a point guard, and they have another guy can pass it, and their other star player also is willing to give the ball up. I mean, Murray, he's done a great job. He's had good games. There's a guy that's really come alive in the playoffs. I mean, hell, you always look to see and hope you try to play better in the playoffs than you did in the regular season, because even a lot of great players actually didn't play better in the playoffs than they did in the regular season. And I always tell people, if you want to go and you have a player and you say how really good he is, check his stats for what he did in regular seasons and what he did in the playoffs and see, because it's harder to do well in the playoffs because they let the defense do so much more and get so physical. But that's when you need to play better, or at least play the same. And some guys didn't necessarily do that. It's kind of like in baseball. You have guys, who they get there and they get to the World Series and their batting average drops 40 points or something of that nature. And, basketball is the same way. You have to elevate your game. And, they're a good team. I mean, they got guys that are willing to be role players. That's what it takes. You know what I'm saying? You can't have all Chiefs and no Indians.
Rick Barry, NBA Hall of Famer.
Mad at me for saying that's some kind of a thing, that's saying I talk bad about the Indian tribe. I love the Indians. The most overlooked, ethnic group in the United States is the American Indians. You want to talk about not being treated right? So hell, we took their land from them.
That's 100% true. No one's taking offense here, Rick. Rick, did you play in Denver at all, Rick, during your time?
Oh, yeah, I did. That's my big concern for the Heat was, I was talking to friends and get on some shows. I said, if I were exposure, I would be planning, hey, let's win this game and be prepared to go directly to Denver to get acclimated to the altitude. Because I'm telling you right now, I saw something on the NBA.com about the altitude. It's something you're going to have an article or something or talk about it. Without question, the altitude's a factor. I live at 6,400 feet half the year here in Colorado, and it's definitely a factor. Even the Nuggets players who live there and stuff say it can become a factor. So you want to try to get a couple of days to get acclimated. Otherwise, there's a time during the course of that game when you get up there. I remember going and you go to take a big deep breath and you're sucking in and you're not getting anything. It's crazy.
That's the thing. It's like people are kind of poo-pooing that. And I've said Denver has the best home court advantage, not because of the fans, but because when you're not used to playing in that environment, I don't know, Rick, like, was it harder at the beginning of the game, at the end of the game? What was it like for you?
Well, you just didn't know when it was going to, eventually it was going to hit you. I mean, it hit you hard. Where you really got to go. Maybe you got to go a couple of fast breaks, doing stuff, playing some tough defense, running, and all of a sudden you're just trying to get your breath, and it's really hard to do that. I mean, you're trying to suck air from anywhere. And so that can have an impact on you. Now, you're still going to get relatively adjusted to it, but yes, it will impact you. If you don't have enough oxygen in your body and do stuff, your body's just not going to function as well as it would if you have all the oxygen you need.
And I don't think people realize that until they've been there, until you have what looks like two pairs of lips because your upper lip is totally chapped and you feel lightheaded and you feel dehydrated. And no matter how much you drink, you can't get hydrated. It takes your body a while to adjust to that. Take it from Rick Barry, NBA Hall of Famer who played there. Take it from me who lived there for 2 years. I can't put this into clear enough terms for you guys. It is a total adjustment that if you're not ready for it, will get you big time. Rick,
yeah. How much of an impact it's going to have on somebody, we don't know, but it can have an impact. It doesn't mean a guy still can't go out there and perform and play at a high level, which, obviously they did, and these guys are well-conditioned athletes. But without question, it's going to affect you sometime during the course of that game. You can't help but notice it.
Rick, when you consider where the NBA is today and the would-be contenders, we didn't have a 60-win team this year, but we have a diversity of talent before that maybe the NBA has never seen in terms of what every player can do. I was wondering, Rick, do you have a roster recommendation for a contender? Is there a piece out there that could be acquired to push a potential contender over the top?
Well, here's the biggest thing about team sports. It's really it is about the personnel. If you don't pick the right players, it just doesn't work. And we've seen a lot of teams. Well, I mean, Brooklyn is a perfect recent example, right? Everybody thought, Brooklyn's going to be unbelievable, right? You don't know about injuries. You don't know about chemistry. But you have to get players who are first of all, foremost, have a great feel for the game. I mean, if I was a scout, that's the first thing I look for. I watch a player for 10-15 minutes. I know whether or not I want to find anything else more about him, because I want to see if he has the one thing that can never be taught. Does he have a natural feel for the game? Never can be taught. And it's easy to see whether someone has it or not. Those are the players I would. I would want now at 15-man rosters. If I was involved with the team, I wouldn't want to have anybody on my team that wasn't someone who had a natural feel for the game. It's such a big element and takes you to a whole different level. There are guys in the NBA playing today that are really outstanding, amazing athletes, and they don't have a great feel for the game, and they're not fundamentally sound. As good as they are, they would have been so much better, and they'll never reach their full potential. So those are the things I look for. You look for the natural feel for the game and look for the fundamentals. Are they fundamentally sound and they have a natural feel for the game? Then you want to find out. Then you can watch other things. If he's got something wrong, you can help change his shot and do this, whatever. You can teach him a lot of other things. And then you want to find out what kind of person he is, what's in his heart. That's what you want to find out, and be unselfish. And so if you find that combination, you got a chance to be very successful for a very long period of time. It's one of the reasons why the San Antonio Spurs were so good, because R.C. Buford had probably one of the best working relationships with the coach, with Ian Pop, to bring in people. I mean, it was actually incredible to see what they did and the right people they pulled in, and some name players and all. But that's what they did to keep themselves up at the high level. They had their steady players there. Then they kept bringing these other veteran guys in, but only the right kind, and drafting the right people. That keeps you there. That's an incredible element. And actually, when Jerry West was doing stuff with the Lakers and they had their long run, that was the whole thing, the quality of the players. Then you hope you get a coach that doesn't screw things up, right? I mean, seriously, because a lot of coaches have had a lot of talent and not done well, and a lot of coaches have done really well without a super amount of talent. And that's the difference. And it's all about the personnel. You got to get the right personnel. So I, as far as changing and doing stuff for somebody, you have to look at a team and see what it is they need. But in my mind, I look at some teams' rosters. I don't see how a guy who's a wing player, and actually most everybody's a wing player now because the centers are out there, the fours, everybody's out shooting 3-point shots. So I guess we have 5 wing players, and occasionally some guys decide to be an inside player. So the whole thing is if a guy is not a good 3-point shooter, unless he's an incredible defender, rebounder, shot blocker, or something like that, I mean, and a bigger guy, why the hell is he on your team? Because you have to shoot the 3 in today's game to be victorious and be a champion. You have to.
Rick, what can you tell us about AlloMD, Medic Leaf, GoSleeves.com?
Yeah, real quickly. ALLEMD.com, Medicaleaf, MEDICILEAF.com, and Go Sleeves, GOSLEEVES.com. If you remember those, Go Sleeves, Medicaleaf, and AlloMD, all.com. The code is RB24. Just read about them. It's their cannabinoid products. Unbelievable. No THC in it. Every day I use these products. The other one's about sleeves. If you got bad knees, if you got a problem with your calves, Achilles, elbows, amazing product with kinesio tape built in. I use them all the time. Put the code RB24 in. You get a nice discount. I think you'll love the products, and I hope they work for you as well as they do for me.
One of the 50 best players that have ever played the game, Rick Barry. So truly and greatly appreciate your insight, Rick. And so sorry for your loss in the last week, Rick. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I thank you. And people watch the game tomorrow and let's see what they do. I'm looking to see how each team, if they do make serious adjustments, I don't really see where that was a big factor. It was just the factor of a team, especially Miami, having a terrible offensive performance, which really cost them.
There you go, Rick Barry. Thank you so much, Rick. We will talk to you soon, my friend. Rick Barry.
Bye-bye.
What's good, everybody? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 p.m. Genuinely appreciate each and every one of you. So, look, we're getting messages about this. Spur Daddy says Sports Illustrated saying Colorado and Arizona are moving from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. I am not seeing anything that definitive, but we know that it has been rumored for some time. And I honestly believe, should that ultimately come to pass, that would be a mistake for Colorado. I lived in Colorado. I can tell you that philosophically, geographically, culturally, Missouri to me to the SEC, Diesel, doesn't make any sense. Like it's not an SEC.
That's a Big Ten team, really.
Right. It doesn't, like, culturally, geographically, philosophically, it doesn't make any sense. I lived in Colorado. Every time I see Colorado on the map, Diesel, I'm surprised by how centered it is in America. Because when you're living there, it feels as West Coast gets. You look up a map, it's like it's attached to Oklahoma. How is that? Like they're attached to Oklahoma. And you live there, as I did, and you'll see, like, man, this is as hippie country gets. Colorado moving from the Big 12 to the Pac-12 was culturally, philosophically, geographically smart. That's where they fit, right? That place fits with their mindset, with who they are as people. Moving back to the Big 12 is to put them back into more of Texas and SEC country, and that's what I don't understand as much. You know, what's incredible, Diesel, about this is that Colorado and Nebraska, when I lived in Colorado, was the biggest matchup of the year, right? Like that matchup in the Big 12, that was the game that everybody had to see. And now it feels like they couldn't be further apart if they tried, right? Like geographically, I think does Colorado touch Nebraska? But
Colorado borders Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, a little bit of Oklahoma, Texas, and New Mexico to the north, sweeping around to the south, and it borders Arizona and Utah to the west.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Arizona, just Utah.
Yeah. So now it feels like Nebraska and Colorado couldn't be further apart. Nebraska has moved its state east to the Big Ten. Colorado has moved its state west to the Pac-12. I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe they feel like they want to get off of a sinking ship, but culturally, Diesel, I like the Pac-12 better for them.
Hey, we all remember Dumb and Dumber when he gets sleepy and takes the wrong exit and he ends up going a quarter of the country and back in the wrong direction. They were in Colorado and somehow they ended up way back in Nebraska.
That's true. That is true. 71307 on the text line is where you guys can get to us on the show. It has been great to see the YouTube page popping today. Looking at Brandon Keeler, Trey Davis, Spur Daddy, Dan B, all in the chat today. So that is awesome to see as well. Let's see what you guys are saying on the text line here today. It isn't the best way to do the regionals as far as eliminations, but I prefer it over one and done, a texter says. Texter says, Mark, I'm a Gamecock fan. I would rather have won the football game, but I would love for the baseball team to make it to Omaha. As a Gamecock fan, I'm not talking trash to you, Mark. The Gators will be the ones with revenge on their mind after getting swept by Carolina during the season. Let us continue here. Yeah.
By the way, we have a little data to back up our assertion earlier. The question was, South Carolina fans, we know you love both, but would you trade being an annual regional and super regional baseball program for an annual college football playoff team? 74% say yes. Give us football playoffs. 26% say no, Omaha or bust.
See, Diesel, even when you make it obvious, they're such prisoners of the moment that they take the right now. Even when you make it obvious, what person in their right mind would choose Omaha over a regular college football playoff appearance?
Baseball success, I think, lasts and feels good for about 3 months. College football success lasts for generations.
Agree. But if the Gamecocks win and advance past Florida into the College World Series, that would be something else. Texter says those bottom 10% of Gamecock fans are the ones that live in their mom's basement, threatening people on social media. Just a bunch of keyboard bangers. I wish I could give an online course to these bottom 10% and on fan etiquette and how not to look like trailer trash. So says Spur Daddy. Texter says, if I showed up at the date and she was wearing Duke blue, I would leave her immediately. JT and Greer wants me to know that if I poke the Clemson fans, I will find they have a bottom 10% that is brutal as well. Yeah, JT, again, buddy, it's not saying that the bottom 10% of every fan base is pretty, but literally there is nothing off limits to the bottom 10% of Gamecock fans. Nothing off limits to them. It goes far beyond trash talk, far beyond that, to the point where you just have to sit back and laugh and feel sorry for some of these people, because you saying something about their team disrupts their homeostasis so much, right? Throws them completely off balance. Texter says, my next door neighbor is an assistant coach on a prominent volleyball program. She went to South Carolina, and her husband played for South Carolina. Great people, but I wear my purple and white all the time. That is for Furman, of course. Yeah, like 90% are great. 90% are outstanding. And that's what makes the bottom 10% of that fan base so perplexing, right? Do not be a bottom 10%er. Coming up next on the show, we've got Shane Beamer going scorched earth on someone other than me. That's next. This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel. And we are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides. Mark, Ron, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Great to have you guys with us. Hope you had an awesome weekend. Roll it on until 7 p.m. today. Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show joining us in the next segment. So Shane Beamer is going a little bit nuclear on something other than yours truly, which is good to see. To reset on this, Shane Beamer and I, there was a little trading of barbs, a little dust up back in January. And, he did not like that I said that Clemson got the offensive coordinator that South Carolina wanted. He didn't like that I said that. So, there were some barbs back and forth. I said to him that, I'm not used to, elite head coaches don't act this way. There's been no communication since then between Shane and I. I think he's doing a wonderful job at South Carolina, a fantastic job. And I think there's a ton of reason to be excited if you are a Gamecock fan. Now, it's interesting. Shane Beamer lost leading rusher Marshawn Lloyd to Southern Cal, tight end Jaheim Bell, and defensive end Gilbert Edmond to Florida State, and DT Jordan Birch to Oregon. And he was asked about that. And he said, it was strange based on conversations I'd had with guys 2 or 3 days before they went into the portal. It's interesting how things happen, Beamer said this week at the Southeastern Conference spring meetings. What does that tell you? Like, how do you read into that if you're reading between the lines? Beamer has exit interviews with his players. Hey, man, we're excited to have you back next year. Yeah, coach, I'm excited to be here. Here's where I think you could take a couple steps forward in your game. Why don't you work on this during the summer? Why don't you do these kinds of workouts, those sorts of things? But we're going to have a great 2024. Coach, I can't wait. Can't wait. It's going to be great. 2 or 3 days later, players in the portal. Beamer's like, how did this happen? Right? How on earth did this happen? We just spoke. Everything was great. And then you get like the breakup text from your lady after you just had the best date you ever been on. Beamer just had the best year at South Carolina in a long time. What do you mean you just sent me the breakup text? I thought everything was going great here. Well, Jordan Birch says Oregon, has more money. Imagine getting dumped for more money. That's what's happening to Shane Beamer. And what's happening to Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks is in many respects illegal. When I was sitting down with, when we were all sitting down with Greg Sankey from the SEC here in Greenville, he was asked about tampering. And was that his responsibility to step in the way of that? And he said, no, it's the NCAA's. We need them to do their jobs. It's their job to enforce this. Every single school has an enforcement officer. And the problem is the enforcement officers seem to always be in cahoots with the school. They're employed by the school. Like if you want to keep your job, do you really want to be uncovering all of this dirt by the school? The compliance officers need to be employed by the NCAA and sent to schools with the knowledge that they're there. If there's something going on, they need to find it.
Their job is to be a narc. Right now their job is to not rock the boat, but they should be there to be a narc.
100%. If there's a problem, they'll solve it. That's their job. Instead, the current situation is their job is to stick their heads in the sand. You didn't see it. I didn't see it. No, I didn't see that. I didn't see that at all. An article I was reading today said there's 2 main reasons why tampering is hard to stop. It's difficult to prove, and coaches are cautious about turning in their colleagues and potentially damaging a player's eligibility. So how do you prove that tampering is going on? Number one, those who are smart, whenever they have something controversial to say, they say it, right? When you put something controversial in writing, now you have a paper trail. So I imagine these tampering fools do it. Never have it in writing, unless the player turns them in. How do you find it? Right? Like, how do you ever find the cheating? So I want to ask you guys this question at 844-326-3663. And the question is this: do you have any ideas on how to put an end to this crap? How do you crack down on tampering? My best idea is simply to have the NCAA employ the compliance officers and send them out on like 4-year military stints. For these 4 years, you're going to be in Clemson, right? Then the person shifts to a different stint. You don't want to live for the course of your life at a place where everyone's going to have sharp, pointy objects to throw at you. Right?
Well, also, if you are moving every couple of years, then you don't live there long enough to have insiders trying to throw money at you. Hey, look the other way. We got this guy coming in. Look the other way. He's on a roster over there, but look, don't report this. Here's a suitcase full of cash.
Jimbo Fisher says the NFL deals with it, don't they? Major League Baseball deals with it. That's something that I wish you could enforce, but I think that is an issue. I think it's a big issue, and it's unfair to different levels of schools. God in this case was Nick Saban. Jimbo Fisher says if they get caught, there should be severe penalties. Beamer says rumors are one thing, proof is another. Kirby Smart says, so look, if kids are exploring to leave, it's really hard to police. Ask the NCAA. If a kid goes to his trainer or high school coach, well, in our program, we have people talking to those trainers and high school coaches. Word of mouth spreads that a guy's not happy and he's looking. Next thing you know, he's in the portal and he's already got somewhere that he wants to go. This is the dirty underbelly, folks, that we'd love. Anytime I get a scoop on this, I'll share it with you. We love to get the dirt, but this is going on kind of day in, day out. It's driving coaches insane. And then you think about Jordan Birch was going to be the guy on the Gamecocks defensive line this year. Marshawn Lloyd was going to be the guy at a team that, doesn't have a running back. So now the guy is just willing to up and leave. Why would that be? It's not for opportunity, Diesel. He's got the opportunity.
It's for cash.
It's for cash.
Being number one on the depth chart doesn't mean that much anymore. And that's a weird place to be in college football.
Man, it is so odd. It is so odd. How about Sam Pittman? Anybody that comes into your office and says, hey, I'm going to go in the portal, and then the next day they already know where they're going, they probably had a conversation or two before then, Pittman said.
It's like the quarterback who left Wake Forest to go to Notre Dame. How would he know that he wanted to go to Notre Dame if he hadn't already had conversations with him?
It was reported that he was going to Notre Dame the second that he entered the portal. The second that he entered. You mean to tell me that conversation just happened? That just took place? Man, I got a bridge to sell you. You got to sell me on South Bend, Indiana a little bit more. They got a nice university there, but South Bend, Indiana sucks as a place to live. I keep hearing that. What's wrong with it?
It's just in the middle of nowhere.
You been there?
It's really industrial.
Yeah.
No, it's just what I've heard. It's not a pretty place to be. If it wasn't for Notre Dame, South Bend, Indiana would barely exist.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, folks, that's where we are. And if I were Shane Beamer, I would have raised eyebrows as well. Because how do you lose a starter? How do you lose? It's one thing to lose a kid who's not getting an opportunity to play. It's another thing to lose like your top 5 or top 10 players who are getting that opportunity. What can Marshawn Lloyd and Jordan Birch tell coach? Just that it's over. I'm leaving. Imagine getting broken up with and not getting a reason. That would drive me nuts. I'm leaving. Why are you leaving? Things are going great. I'm leaving. Okay, but we've had this 2-year relationship. Like I'm not owed a reason as to why you're leaving, as to why you're unhappy. No, I'm just leaving. You play in the SEC. You play in the conference that produces more NFL draft talent than anybody else. So Beamer's not getting reasons because there are none outside of greenbacks. Outside of Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson, outside of what appears on the dollar bills, y'all. That's all they are. That's all they're coming from. That's all they get. Let's see here. Texter says, I'm a female, and I spent my 20th birthday at the South Carolina Clemson game and will never forget getting hit by batteries by a bunch of male Clemson fans. I am a Gamecock fan. Great to hear from you. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And there are awful fans in every fan base. There's no doubt about that. Zero doubt about that. And again, I appreciate having you listen. I really, really do. And 90% of all Gamecocks that I've had interactions with are really good people. I also think that because of the nature of our show, I am subjected to things that a lot of you guys never see. My fan base doesn't do that. Let me show you some of what I've gotten. Let me show you a little bit of it. Okay? Then you'll realize it.
As the kids say, he's got the receipts.
I've got the receipts, right? So let's see here. To me, Colorado is a Mountain West team. So says Wolverine Joe. Wolverine Joe, if you live there, you feel differently. I would imagine tampering is happening everywhere. And I mean everywhere, a texter says. Maybe different levels, but I think it's going on everywhere, which is why they aren't giving specifics, because it'll fall back to the if you tell on me, I'll tell on you category. Texter says, Coach Beamer got his star running back stolen by one of his best buds, Lincoln Riley. Wonder if they are best buds right now. I mean, that's a great point, right? Shane Beamer was employed by Lincoln Riley. Then Lincoln Riley uses that connection to swipe his running back, because that's exactly what happened. You think Marshawn Lloyd is going to enter the transfer portal not knowing if he's going to get an offer from Southern Cal or Cal State Fullerton? He knows what the offer is going to be before he gets in there. And that's what's so odd about this. All right, we've got Chris Phillips joining the show up next. We'll see what Chris says about the Gamecocks moving on to the Super Regional, about them taking on my beloved Florida Gators, and about whether Campbell was still, in fact, screwed. That's next. This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 7 p.m. today. Truly appreciate you making us part of your day. So, look, I got a good relationship with Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show. He joins us right now on the show. Chris, always do appreciate the time, man. How are you?
Doing well, Mark. What's going on, boys? Appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah, you got it, man. You got it. So, Chris, I love coming on your show. I got to be honest with you. I don't always feel like, Chris, that you post the full context of the comments. And so, Chris, I know that you know this about me, that I can deal with the heat, right? So you post something and you do it because you think your people will react to it, and they do. But I feel like sometimes the complete context is not there for what I'm saying. Like, you'll post a 20-second clip, and then you ignore the fact that I actually picked the Gamecocks to win their regional. And so I got all these people coming at me, and they're upset and they're angry. Last night it was a weekly bozo alert. So I want to share with you, Chris. I love it. It would be great if you could post the full context of the statements that I make, so that, like you've done a good job when I have things nice to say about Shane Beamer, the Gamecocks, you post those. With this one from the last week, I thought some of the context was missing. But I do want to wish you and Gamecock fans congratulations on making it through the regional. We predicted they'd make it through the regional, and I don't think Campbell should beat you playing in Founders Park when you consider all the advantages, financial and otherwise, the Gamecocks have.
Yeah, Mark, I'll say this. Our guy James, who's actually in the Big Cock Club Discord, he posted that. And I know you picked South Carolina to beat Campbell, and I think everybody that tunes in, he actually tunes into the Daily Crow as well. He knew you picked South Carolina to beat Campbell, but people just love to needle you, Mark. And so, hey, we live by the sword, die by the sword. I can laugh with you because I feel your pain, or I can appreciate the entertainment you get out of it because I get that on a day in, day out basis, my friend. I mean, it's the Monday after South Carolina. We're not even 24 hours removed from the Gamecocks punching their ticket to the Super Regionals. And my goodness, Gamecock fans are coming after me, a Gamecock content creator, like you would think we lost or something, or I'm calling for a coach's job. So it is the nature of the beast, man. It is Twitter. But no, I know you picked Counter to win, and I would agree on their home field. I think it was expected. I mean, I picked South Carolina because I really thought this team was getting back to being healthy. And I also thought just that home field advantage, the home crowd energy, and I thought you saw that all weekend. I mean, I think the Gamecocks, they love to swing it at home. They were 26-7 coming into the weekend. They're now 29-7. That's what they'll finish at Founders Park. And, of course, they get the Florida Gators, which I know we'll have some fun with that. I've actually got your guy in all kinds of weather.com. We're going to collab on some content this week and talk a little South Carolina, Florida baseball. And I'm looking forward to it, man. It'll be the first time the Gamecocks and Gators have met in the postseason since that fantastic 2011 finals. And I know Florida is going to be looking for revenge, but two just high-quality SEC ball clubs, man, down in Gainesville, and that's exactly what you want this time of year. You want the best on best, and it's a great opportunity for both sides. But, yeah, fun weekend in Columbia for sure, and been a long time coming. And I'm happy and proud, by the way, Mark Kingston, who I think should be back next year after getting this team to the Super Regionals.
Chris, I was looking into Campbell's record over the course of the regular season, not the regional, but the regular season, when they played teams that were either Power 5 teams or teams that made their way into various regionals across this country. And Campbell is a really solid baseball program, 10-4 over the season against regional quality opponents. 6-2 at home, 4-2 on the road. What do South Carolina Gamecock fans need to learn about themselves so that they can learn to learn that context instead of spending the last 24 hours bashing on Campbell as if they were a team that didn't deserve to be there, didn't deserve to host a regional, and just say, man, we just beat a really good Campbell team. We should feel proud of ourselves about that.
Well, guys, I would say to you all this: good luck with reasoning with those people on social media. Listen, and I'll say this too, and I know I listened to you guys show a little bit earlier today, and I've actually talked with Mark about this off the air, on the air, what have you, about the bottom 10% or whatever you want to label, if it's 5%, if it's 7%, if it's 10%. And the thing that I really try my hardest to do is not let the bottom 10% affect 90% of my opinion. You know what I mean? I try to not let the bottom percentage affect my view of the whole. And I think, unfortunately, on Twitter and social media, like, that's what stands out, the craziness, we've got a word for it I won't say here on these airways, but just some of the chaos that stands out on Twitter. And so every single time, whether it be the Gamecocks beating someone, another SEC school beats someone, like, you go to the mentions of that score, if you will, and you're going to see the craziness. And I'm someone, listen, I love the banter. I love the back and forth. I was giving it to Campbell this weekend. I was giving it to those guys. But, you know, we also had great conversation with guys. Shout out to the Orange and Black podcast and Fully Caffeinated on Twitter that were their Campbell guys at a Campbell podcast. And they were really cool. They were really, really cool dudes. And, I mean, what sports if you can't banter back and forth? But to your point, I would agree with you. Like, I think it stands out that South Carolina, they did not dogpile, because at home, you should expect to beat a Big South team, even if they're the number 2 seed, on your home field. And if you're South Carolina, I don't care who's in your regional. If you're hosting a home regional, you don't dogpile after you win that regional. You expect to win the regional and get to the supers. You know, that's what a program that's won 2 national titles. I mean, that's minimum expectations, right? So, I mean, to your point, Diesel, I would just say this. I try to not think about it too much, because I feel like it's a fool's errand to think we can change these people on social media. And I just try to have empathy with some of them, because it's you got to be in a really, really messed up, dark, twisted, sick place to act the way some of these people do on Twitter. But, you know, it is what it is. At the same time, I love the passion, and it's why we're able to do what we do and do it so successfully in this market.
Hey, Chris, we have 2 words for those people, and we can say those words on the radio. We call them angry birds.
Angry.
Fair enough. Well, the 2 words I could say, I can't say. Let me put it that way. I got many words. Most of them I can't say.
I think I know what those 2 words are.
So,
Right.
So Chris, if I say it when you're not here, I'll say it when you are here. I was disappointed, Chris, that this weekend you were coming at me. Not that you can come at me. I'm not disappointed about that, but that you were coming at me about what you were coming at me for. And I thought, Chris, you are better than the lazy analysis of the result proving that Campbell didn't deserve the right to host a regional. I got a couple stats for you here, Chris. The Denver Nuggets were 34-7 at home, 19-22 on the road. The Memphis Grizzlies, the Denver Nuggets are in the NBA Finals right now. The Memphis Grizzlies were the second best team in the Western Conference, 35-6 at home, 16-25 away. To me, like, it is amazing. Like, I expect that kind of analysis from the bottom 10%. I did not expect that kind of analysis from you. Because I thought it was pretty obvious that Campbell got bent over and screwed, and we'll never know what would have happened if they hosted their own regional. They didn't, Chris. You and I and everyone else predicted the Gamecocks would beat them at South Carolina, right?
That's correct. And I guess I'll just say this, Mark, some of the reason I was a little bit more fiery this weekend than normal and had a little bit more fun than I guess I normally do. I get it. Campbell went to Columbia. So naturally, the Gamecocks were the one getting crapped on and getting stones thrown at. But they should have been hosting. South Carolina had every right to be a regional host. It's Auburn who shouldn't have been hosting a regional. And that was proven over the weekend when they got knocked out of their own regional. Penn and Southern Miss are playing right now, the 4 seed, I believe the 3 seed in that one, to see who goes. Auburn went 2 in barbecue. So if you want to argue Campbell got screwed, that's totally fine. But I think the Gamecocks having to catch the heat for that, I just think it's a bit unfair. And then I understand for sure, playing on the road, it completely changes the game. But game 1 for Campbell was not against South Carolina. I understand it wasn't at their ballpark, but guess what? The regional technically wouldn't have been at their ballpark either. It would have been at a minor league ballpark, and they still lost game 1 to NC State. So I don't know what the excuse is in that situation. Also, I'll just say I'll agree to disagree. I don't think playing that game in a minor league park in Fayetteville is going to make up a 9-run difference. I think what you saw yesterday or last night was the difference in a Big South team and an SEC team. And it's not Campbell's fault. It's just the depth, the quality depth of your pitching staff. Like Campbell at that point had run out of arms, and they just did not have the guys to go up against Carolina. They're a great swinging team. If there's anything they could improve on, it's obviously getting more dudes on the bump. But you know, after you take shots all week long and you hear it from everybody and all the chirping and everything, all the analysis, all the picking Campbell to win it like South Carolina is some scrub team, I guess I'll ask for forgiveness for having a little bit of a chip on my shoulder watching my favorite team play. That's what I'll say.
Chris Phillips joining us here on the show this afternoon. Chris, Shane Beamer with some comments on the transfer portal recently, and it's interesting to me. He said, quote, "It was strange to lose the guys we did because you talk to them 2 or 3 days before they go into the portal, and it's interesting how things happen." He said, "I imagine that means he's having like exit interviews. Everything's great, everything's cool. Then he gets the breakup text, Chris." And he's not given a reason why for the breakup. Imagine having a 2-year relationship, Chris, and then you get the text and she goes, "I'm leaving you." Why? No reason. I'm leaving you. You know what I mean? He's got more money than you. He's got more money than you. That's why I'm leaving you. And I think, when we had a chance to speak to Greg Sankey here in Greenville, Chris, he said that, look, we need the NCAA to do their jobs, but how do you do this job? How do you enforce this? I was reading an article today. It said it's hard to stop because it's difficult to prove. And then you got coaches who are cautious about turning in their colleagues and potentially damaging a player's eligibility. But we were just talking in the last segment, Chris, that the Gamecocks lost starters that were playing in the conference that is best to get drafted in. So I side with Shane Beamer here, man.
Yeah. Well, to your point, too, it's kind of funny, Mark. Brad Lawing is a friend of mine and a friend of the show and a guy I've had on a couple of times. And he's actually told me, and this is obviously way before the transfer portal, NIL, and that stuff, but he's told me about old recruiting stories in the 90s and early 2000s. He was actually the defensive line coach at Florida for a little bit, Florida State, South Carolina, Michigan State, all these different schools. But, he would tell me that kind of the wild, wild west of recruiting, and all the coaches knew they were all doing certain things and just kind of said, hey, as long as you don't crap in my yard, I won't crap in your yard. You know what I mean? Stay out of my territory. We'll keep everybody's nose will be kept clean, I guess you could say. Funny enough, he actually had a Billy Napier story now that I think about it, but we'll save that for another time. But anyways, yeah, I mean, it's the transfer portal, man. I don't know how you fix it, to your point. I really don't know how. I would say this to the South Carolina side specifically. You think about the guys, Jaheim Bell, Marshawn Lloyd, Jordan Birch, Gilbert Edmond, all Muschamp guys. So I guess if you're looking for a silver lining, maybe that won't happen quite as much moving forward, but I'm not going to hold my breath just because the transfer portal is what it is. So, I mean, these coaches are getting paid handsomely to do their job. And, at this point, I think they deserve every penny because it's just really tough to be a head football coach now when you've got to juggle recruiting and your current roster and, boosters and events, and then you got practice, you got games, you got to worry about winning, and then, oh, by the way, guys can just up and leave whenever they want. So, and then recruiting your own roster, recruiting the portal, I mean, it's just madness. So, I don't really know how you fix it, Mark. I mean, I really don't. I don't know what you're able to do to stop the quote-unquote tampering, which I think obviously Beamer's referring to, but it's something they've got to put some sort of rules and regulations in place, and thankfully there are people smarter than I who will make sure that gets enforced. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely not fun when it happens to you. And unfortunately, the Gamecocks felt the effects of that multiple times in this last portal cycle.
Last one for you, Chris. Got about 60 seconds. Who should be the favorites? Florida against South Carolina.
I think Florida at home should. And I think you look at the body of work over the second half of the season. I think Florida was more consistent. I think they've got issues in the bullpen, but the Gamecocks, are they hot? But I think you do have to take into consideration somewhat, who was in their regional and in regards to the quality of competition. I'm not trying to crap on like they beat nobodies, but Central Connecticut State, throw them out. NC State was a below 500 ACC team, and then Campbell, really, really good team, but, the best the Big South had to offer. So maybe Florida was more battle-tested in their regional. But, I mean, dude, I think it's a coin flip. I think it's almost like 51-49. I'd probably go Florida should be the favorite, but I think it's going to be a classic series. Also, Mark, it's just really hard to beat a team 5 times. Gamecocks already swept them, so we'll see if they can do it. But Florida, is going to be revenge-minded.
Well, I look forward to your prediction of Florida over the Gamecocks. I'm sure that's going to go over well.
I'm sure it will, Mark. Hey, even if I pick South Carolina to win, I'll be labeled as the kiss of death. So I literally can't win.
Look forward to the conversation later this week, man. Thank you, bud.
Mark Diesel, y'all take care. I appreciate it.
All right, take care. Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show joining us here on the show. We've got the top 5 at 5 coming your way next, right here on Offsides. We are the Fan Upstate. What's good, everybody? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. You have so many choices in terms of your media listening, in terms of your media time. We thank you for making us part of your afternoon. Truly do appreciate that. Here's how you guys can take part in what we've got cooking. You can give us a ring at 844-326-3663. And you can hit us on the text line at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan, and away you go on the show. It is time for us to do that jam. We call it the Top 5 at 5, the top 5 biggest sports stories of the day, the top 5 topics we're discussing. Ladies and gentlemen of the Upstate Offsiders, the Top 5 at 5 starts right now.
And now, the Top 5 at 5.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hit it.
5.
All right, at number 5 today, I've got 3 moves for you that absolutely have to happen in the NBA's offseason. All right, now I want you to follow me on this. Chris Paul to Boston. You watch the Boston Celtics play, what are they missing? They're missing a veteran leader. They're missing an instigator, a distributor, a facilitator. Chris Paul is old, but Boston's window and everybody's window to win a title is small. Boston's window is now. Chris Paul has a strained groin every single year. Okay, you guys have a strained groin when you see a model. He's got a strained groin when he sees the NBA playoffs. Every single year, he's got that. But here's what I would do. I'd trade for Chris Paul. I would have him play the first half of the season. I would sit him the entire second half of the season. And then he'd play the final couple weeks right before the playoffs. You have Chris Paul facilitating for the Celtics. I think that could get him over the hump. The Miami Heat, I have them sending Tyler Hero to Portland for Damian Lillard. You know the Heat were the lowest scoring team in the NBA this year? You know the Heat's record in their final 25 games heading to the postseason? 12 wins and 13 losses. You know the Heat lost a play-in game and were trailing in their elimination play-in game in the fourth quarter. And yet here they are in the NBA Finals. I think should they lose, Damian Lillard gets them over the hump. And then number 3 for me, how about Bradley Beal of Washington heading to the New York Knicks? Remember back in Tampa, my co-host was Booger McFarland of Monday Night Football, and Booger once told me that the Raiders offered him a 1-year, $1 million deal when he was at the end of his career, and he turned it down. And he said to me, do you know how hard it was for a kid from rural Louisiana to turn down $1 million for 6 months worth of work? And I said, so why did you? He goes, man, the Raiders is where players go to die at that time, right? That's where they were. Bradley Beal's in a spot where players go to die, Diesel. Like he's in Washington. Whatever happens in Washington. New York made it to the second round of the playoffs. Didn't have the punch to beat Miami. I think you trade Julius Randle in a package for Bradley Beal. Now they've got the punch they need to get to the conference final, to take the next step. So I've got Boston adding Chris Paul, the Heat going after Damian Lillard, and Bradley Beal to the Knicks. 3 moves I'd love to see in the NBA's offseason. What say you? Next up.
4.
At number 4, college baseball. Congrats to the Gamecocks on winning their regional and making it to the Super Regional. Well, they will take on my beloved Florida Gators. Who do you got in that series? As to the Clemson side, a bogus suspension really hurt this team. I thought Bakich was a little bit late with the hook in that Tennessee game. Overall, it doesn't change the shine of the season, right? Anytime you finish in third place in your own regional, that's disappointing. But consider where the Clemson baseball program was a year ago, and considering where they are now, and consider just how close they were to having beaten Tennessee and then sitting there in the championship game of the winners bracket yesterday instead of having to win 3 games in a row. I thought it was an outstanding job by Eric Bakich. I think he's taken that program places. And now we will see if the Gamecocks can fulfill their prophecy and make it to Omaha by beating the Orange and Blue. Next up.
3.
All right, so Diesel and I did a little topic today that was kind of fun, and it was called, What Fan Base Would You Never Date? Can I open that up to you guys as well? Is there a fan base you would never date? Is it Clemson? Is it South Carolina? 71307 on the text line. Diesel said he would never date someone who attended Georgia Southern.
You know, it's funny. I used to say that I would never date a Furman Paladin, and then I married one.
So Diesel is Georgia Southern. I looked at this because I've done this segment before, okay? And back in the day, the answer was I wouldn't date someone who went to Florida State or Georgia. There is now just one team, folks, that if I was single, and thank goodness I'm not, but if I was single, I could never date. That fan base, the South Carolina Gamecocks. Why? Well, 90% of the Gamecock fans that I know are good, upstanding citizens of society. 90%. All right? But the bottom 10% of the Gamecock fan base, as you guys know, is the worst portion of any fan base I've ever encountered in my life. But that doesn't mean back in my single days that the Gamecock girl fan would be that, right? Doesn't mean she would be in the bottom 10%. No. But I would not want to expose her to the bottom 10% coming after her. And therefore, I'm wiping the whole fan base clear. You've heard the expression, one bad apple spoils the bunch. Well, if you were exposed to what I've been exposed to, you would see there are quite a few. Who is the fan base you would never date? And what is your reasoning? Next up.
2.
At number 2, Diesel, I'm telling you, I feel like we should kind of get credit for a little bit of a scoop on this, even though we won't. A few weeks ago, all of the arrows were pointing towards linebacker Sammy Brown heading to Georgia, not Clemson. We had Jeremy Johnson on the show. You remember what he said? He goes,
No, I wasn't here that day.
Oh, that's right.
I was out that week, so
Yeah,
I'm privy to this.
He said that no, Sammy. I feel like Sammy Brown and Clemson and Georgia are neck and neck, and all of the hype and all the buzz was that he's from Georgia. There's no way he gets away from Georgia, and he said, "No, man. Like I'm hearing a ton of positive things about Clemson. I think they're neck and neck." Now we get the news last night that Clemson might actually be in the lead for one Sammy Brown. And that is really the dynamic shifting information that we got the first taste of when Jeremy Johnson joined this show. It was kind of shocking to me. Like I was expecting him to say, well, you can't rule Clemson out yet, but it's hard for me to see Sammy Brown going anywhere but Georgia. That's what I was expecting. That's not what we got. Now there is a crystal ball prediction of Sammy Brown to Clemson, best linebacker in America, a Brian Bosworth clone in appearance. Okay. And what a get that would be. What a get that would be, my friends.
And that big fluffy blonde mullet's going to look weird sticking out the back of a Clemson orange helmet. Why is that the style now? I don't get it.
He's got the Bosworth look, man. He does. And what if he was Bosworth the player as well? What if you were getting that dude a total animal? Wouldn't that be something else? Next up.
1.
And finally, tampering in college football. All of the SEC coaches are talking about it, but few have anything to stop it. And that's sad, right? Shane Beamer says, man, it was strange losing Marshawn Lloyd, Jaheim Bell, Gilbert Edmond, Jordan Birch. It was strange because based on the conversations I had 2 or 3 days prior, we're good. Everything's good. Then suddenly they're in the portal. Why? It's interesting how things happen. You know, they're saying it's difficult to stop tampering because of 2 reasons. You can't prove it. And then coaches don't want to rat out their colleagues who are cheating. They don't want to potentially hurt a kid who, frankly, should be hurt if they are breaking the rules. Greg Sankey told a group of us back in November that we need the NCAA to do their job and enforce these things. I think the solution is an NCAA-appointed compliance officer, not a compliance officer who essentially looks the other way and is employed by the school. You got to have someone willing to be, as you said, Diesel, the narc, right?
Yeah, well, that's the grift of the century. The NCAA officials keeping their paychecks and just completely taking their hands off of the football wheel. Like, how are they allowed to keep their paychecks?
What is your solution to tampering, ladies and gentlemen? Do you have something that could shut it down?
Chemical castration.
Do you have something that could alleviate the problem? Because it's brutal. You know, like it would be like your girl leaving you without any explanation. Then when you press her for an explanation, why am I getting dumped? She says to you, he's got more money than you do. Imagine that. That's a conversation Shane Beamer had to have multiple times this offseason. And those are today's top 5 at 5. Now it's your chance to chime in. 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-FANFONE. That's 844-326-3663. The text line is there for you at 71307. Just start your text with the word fan and away you go. You can get to us on Facebook and on Twitter at The Fan Upstate, at Diesel on Radio, at Mark Ryan on Air. That's at MARC Ryan on Air. And finally, email. You guys can all email the show. Mark Ryan, that is MARC Ryan at thefanupstate.com. All the different ways you can get in touch with us here on the most interactive sports radio show anywhere. All right, coming up next on the show, we've got undeniable proof that you should ignore the experts. That's next. This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate.
Stream, you guys were awesome yet again today. You absolutely brought it. We were looking at, and we were seeing the at one point there was like a dozen or so people in here watching, and that's great. We're just seeing this thing slowly, incrementally rise. And we can't do it without you telling your friends to get in here and watch, without, sneaking onto your wife or your girlfriend or your mom or dad's phone and subscribing to our YouTube channel from their phone. Any way you do it, appreciate it. And, of course, we'll be back to see you here tomorrow.
We certainly will, guys. Thank you so much. Love or hate, we appreciate the interaction. And we thank you guys so much for really participating and enjoying this. We love bringing it to you, man. We really do. This has added a whole new layer and a dynamic to the show, man. And look, it's going to be a fun week. Florida, South Carolina. Here we go. What do you got, Gamecock fans? Let's make it fun. We'll see you guys tomorrow.